awful problem that you can't actually have your screen up to start with, but there we go. Okay, so thank you very, very much indeed for this invitation, because actually what it's done is push me into thinking about something that has been sitting on the back burner for some considerable time. What is glass giving? Well, glass giving is basically my attempt to use my interest in making handcrafted jewellery to support what I reckon's the best charity in the world, which is our Rotary Foundation. Right? I like making glass, I love supporting foundation, and glass giving is my attempt to put the two things together. It's been on the back burner for some considerable time because I think, Bill, you've circulated this round the club, I think. I've been very busy with an event called Cooking for the Cure, which is a world's greatest meal for End Polio Now, which is going to be on Zoom. And we've been advertising and organising that. So that's taken up most of the time that I would normally spend crafting. The whole idea started with Rebecca, who I know you know, who back in September 2016 was running the London Marathon for Action on Hearing Loss. And rather than just give her some money, I gave her some jewellery to sell among her friends, and she made £152 in the first month. Now, Rebecca likes raising money and I like making jewellery, and so what came out of that, given that Rebecca is also, as I think you probably know, deeply into web and computing and what have you, she set up www.glassgiving.com and we sold glass. And we both started to go around to any local fair or function, what have you, that we could get at, who would give us a table to sell the glass for a small amount of money. And that's really where it started. But that's what we do with it. But maybe I better spend some time explaining how I ended up doing this. I could say that it started when my husband bought me a wedding anniversary present 15 years ago, but actually it started at school because I went to the sort of school where you had yearly exams. And everybody else in the class used to love the art exam result because it pushed their average up. I was the nerd at the back where the average went down. And I spent my life looking for some way to be artistic. I can't paint. I find sculpting boring. Don't talk to me about knitting and sewing, and not even photography. So I went off on this course a little bit dubious, but I love glass as a material because my father had always collected antique glass and I've always been fascinated by it. I loved it. So why are you staring at the back of my house? Because that was the conservatory that was going to be the place where we zenned out in our retirement and took it easy and did nothing. Only what it turned into was a glass studio. We bought ourselves a glass kiln and we bought glass. Oh gosh, did we buy glass? I don't know how many people here are gardeners? No?
Used to be.
Right, okay, so you know the annual thrill of the bulb catalogue arriving. It has nothing, but nothing on your glass catalogue. The colours and the shapes and the types and, oh, it's just lovely. So we bought glass. And a kiln and started glass fusing. Now, I really don't have time to go into the properties of glass or why it's such an amazing material to work with. It doesn't actually have a mind of its own, but it quite often feels like that. And that's perhaps one of the reasons why I love working with glass, because I know everybody has trouble getting it to do what they want it to do. But if anybody is interested in how you make glass and how you use it, then this is an absolutely super link that just explains how they make glass and the different sorts of glass that you make. There are, in fact, 3 skills to glass making. One is cutting, which is actually breaking. One is layering, which is putting the layers of glass on top of each other so that they fuse together, either as a total fuse or what we call tack, where they stick out from each other. And then there is firing. And there are people who actually program their own kilns. I've got a kiln that does it for you. So what do? Well, I take glass. Sorry, somebody's waiting in the waiting room or something. It keeps coming up on my screen.
I've admitted her. Carry on, Carolyn.
Okay, it just keeps coming up on my screen. I didn't know if I was the only one that could see it. Right, so you get glass in 3mm and 2mm thicknesses and all the colours of the rainbow. And the thing that I love to do with it most is to take little bits, put it either under or over a layer of clear or white glass, and make scenes that, to my mind, look like the scenery that we get here in the Highlands. And that's what I love doing most, just taking tiny little snippets of glass and arranging them. However, there is also glass that is already patterned. It's called streaky glass, patterned glass, and that's great fun too, because what you do then is you buy a sheet of glass and you sit there and you stare at it until you work out just where to cut it to get the best pattern in a pendant. So for example, in this one, I would probably, I think you can see my cursor, I would cut there. Okay. Oh, and then there's this stuff. My husband and I christened this Ooh Shiny. It's actually called dichroic glass, and I think you've all got me on speaker view at the same time as the screen. You can see that it changes color. Oh no, you can't. Okay, end of demonstration. It changes color in various lights, so that whatever light you have on it, it differs from time to time, and it is shiny. If you go on the web and look up glass fusing or fused glass pendants, you will find that most of what is sold is that stuff, because it is inherently pretty and it looks lovely. I don't like working with it because you get a very high failure rate, because it doesn't melt at it doesn't vitrify at exactly the same temperature as the clear glass. You get a lot of wastage with bits around the edge that don't totally meld, etc. However, it does sell and it is pretty. Then there's frit. Now, frit is made by heating up the glass and cooling it very rapidly. So though those bits look sharp, they're not. Okay, they're small little bits of glass, and I love to use it just to make scatter patterns, and also I use it a lot in the mosaic scenery ones that I use, because I use it to cover where my cutting hasn't been quite accurate, would be truthful, but it makes lovely foliage effects. You get glass that is already pre-cut into shapes for you. You get this Morella glass, which I always want to call marina glass, and it's not, which it is rods that have a pattern inside them, and then when you melt them, you can see on the left, you can see the small, they turn into flower type patterns. And the strings along the bottom are just that, they're very thin strands of glass, again used in pattern making. Here are my basic tools. You can see that you have clippers and you have a scorer. In the blue one with the shaped handle and the cover, there is a small rotating blade under that cover, and the hollow handle is filled with oil. The oil runs into the cutter and keeps it smooth. To break the glass, what you do is you take your sheet of glass and you lay it on a surface such as that dimpled one I have there. You measure where your cut's going to go, and you stand and you hold your cutter at about 75-degree angle, and you pull it firmly and swiftly towards you. If you're lucky, you get a lovely zipping sound. If you're not lucky, what you get is stutter, stutter, thump, thump. And then you know you're in trouble, because you cannot rescore where you have already scored in glass. And when you take your Browsers, which are the light blue ones on the other side, you take them, there is actually a little ridge inside those, you put them over where you've scored, you gently apply pressure. If you're lucky, you get a straight line and the glass breaks along it. If you're unlucky, it does what the heck it wants to do and goes all over the place or nowhere at all. So here you can see the scorer at the top of at the top left hand side, and this is some photographs I took of making a small mosaic. I have measured and then remeasured a piece of clear glass. I have snipped off small pieces of the other glass and then put it together to make a scene. And then I would be using frit to fill in where the gaps are. And at the bottom you see what it looks like when it goes into the kiln. Your edges should be completely straight. Yes. Okay, now glass in the kiln changes composition in order to meld into each other. Right. And opening the kiln every morning is what my husband used to call our surprises, because glass doesn't actually always do just what you think it's going to do. Because it becomes more molten in the kiln, you don't actually have that much control over where you think it's going to go. You can see the top one, I have overloaded the glass and it has slumped to one side. The middle one, I have used some metallic type frit at what was to be the top to represent clouds, and instead of sinking into the glass, it's decided to stick to the top of the glass. And then at the bottom is the most common sort of problem. Although I have cut that to be perfectly square, one of the pieces of glass has behaved slightly differently and has shrunk in further than the others. I think you can see on the left-hand side the big pendant. I don't know whether it's hidden by people's view of me, but that shows the problem of the edges going slightly wobbly. That's where one layer has not actually been quite as thick as the other. So the thick layer, and it's less than a millimeter. The thick layer has bulged out and the thinner layer has contracted in and given you a wobbly line along the edge. I used to throw them out until I made that piece, and that piece was actually inspired by the colours of the mud flats outside my house here in Och. And I was really cross because I thought, that's just what the mud flats look like, but I can't use you because you're wobbly. And then I looked at the mud flats and I said, something, they're wobbly too. And then I remembered something from, I don't know how many people here know of the Steiner schools. And in the Steiner schools, when they build a building, they never build a straight line, because there are no straight lines in nature. So I have my own glass movement, and it's called the wobbly line movement, and I sell them anyway. And here we have a slide. This was a kiln that I put together just for this talk, just to illustrate the things that I mean. I think you can pick out the ones that are made out of cutting from the patterned glass, right? You can see that there are some that are mosaics, where I have cut pieces and put them in together and used frit. Oh, I forgot to mention the powdered frit, which is a very, very fine frit, which you can use to fill in gaps. And that's a confetti one at the bottom there. That's the very, very fine, thin glass, and a heart shape. You buy the backings separately and stick them on with glue. I have in the past made bowls. I'm not at the moment. That's a technique called slumping. It's nice, but if it goes wrong, you've got an awful lot of waste. I love making tableware. Oh, you can see on the green one, green and orange one, a different sort of problem, a different sort of surprise you can get with glass, which is where it has bubbled slightly, and that's an air bubble, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's no predicting them. They just happen. As I say, it's got a mind of its own. I love making sceneries, little plaques like this one that are slumped into a curve so that they stand up. And I have actually sold them through some of our local charity, through a local charity shop. I did very well during lockdown with rainbows. During lockdown, everybody wanted rainbows. And that top rainbow is made by a technique called tacking, which is where you sprinkle on the frit and you do it at you fuse at a slightly lower temperature so that the frit stays bubbly, stays as small pieces. And the bottom ones are done on a usual full fuse. Every Christmas, I love to think of a new idea for Christmas decorations. That was my tree year. I've done snowmen. I really like the idea of the long, thin, bubbly ones, but they didn't sell, so there you go. And I've experimented with a lot of angels. In fact, this year, I'm thinking angels will be my Christmas special. Now, I honestly didn't know Lisette would be here, because I was actually at this point going to start talking about marketing and saying, but of course, we all need a way of marketing, and some people just do it so well and are so admirable about it. I could never be that big. So what do? Well, I sell on the web. There are problems with selling on the web. One of them is that you have to be at it every day on social media promoting what you sell. A little corner of the web where you think you are selling glass for charity is not going to hit anything unless you keep it in front of everybody all the time. And certainly for the last 2 years, my life just hasn't allowed for that, and probably won't in future. The other problem with selling on the web is, remember what I said about photography? Those are all the same pendant. They were taken within 5 minutes of each other in the room I'm sitting in. All I did was move them around, and that's with an iPhone. So as you can see, it's difficult. The one in the middle is actually truest in color, but I can only get the color by having reflections on it. So it takes quite a long time to upload things to the website. The other thing that I've done quite a bit of is giving the pendants to other charities. I always say if you do sell them, then it would be nice if you bought some and gave money and then sold on yourself, giving some money to foundation. But so far that hasn't happened. But all of these charities are charities to which I have given pendants to sell in their causes, and indeed Livingston sold a lot for me at one point as well. So that is a very quick ramble through an introduction to glass fusing as a hobby, which is a lovely hobby, and how I now try to use my hobby to support foundation. And the position I'm in at the moment is that for personal reasons and because of other Rotary projects, I haven't really been doing anything with it, but I am hoping to start this Christmas. One of the things I want to do is start going around the local Christmas fairs, not to sell this time, but to work out which ones might be worth going to. I am always happy to talk to anybody who supports another Rotary or non-Rotary charity who might be able to use the pendants to sell them on. And if anybody else has any ideas about marketing, and I'm in the presence of a mistress of the art,